In this video, we are going to look at the humanism technique to overcome the prisoner's dilemma of exchange, as well as look at how humanism can also fall down into self-destruction and hatred. So first off, again, we will look at the prisoner's dilemma of exchange down in the bottom right corner, as well as our different types of power in the bottom left corner, and our model of humanism on the screen. So again, with humanism, what's happening is we are redefining self as human, also redefining other as human, and then uniting with the other into a human species together. So what's happening here for humanism is that the primary power that humanism is going to use to overcome the prisoner's dilemma of exchange is going to be agenda power, because we are forming a new path forward together. And so for humanism, life is a cooperative game. We are in this together. It's us, not you, not me, not self, not other, but us. It is the human species itself that needs to thrive, that needs to continue. Again, we're overcoming death through that redefinition of self into part of the human species. So it's the species that needs to thrive. This is a together game. This is not a competitive game. This is a together game, a cooperative game. And so let's take a look at how that's going to work in our prisoner's dilemma of exchange. Again, if it is agenda power, and here we're looking at a positive agenda power, we are adding a new path. And that new path is us. So now we have a third choice here. I can choose self, I could choose other, or I could choose us. So take, for example, person A. If person A is going to choose other, we can see that they're going to receive 3 as a payoff. However, if person B is going to choose us, which is a summation of the payoffs, then person B is actually going to receive 6, because they're going to take into account both individuals' payoff. My payoff plus your payoff. We're both human. We're in this together. So our payoffs are also going to be summed up. If person A is going to choose self, person B is going to simply sum up that and receive 5 as a payoff. And the same will also go for person A with other and self. Now, if we're looking at if both individuals are choosing us, then they're both choosing the summation of other here, and they're both going to receive 6 as a payoff. Solving the game, you can see from person A's perspective, the best option of any of these 3 options, whether it be self, other, or us, is going to be us. So we've created a dominant strategy here for person A. The same is also going to be true for person B. Person B also has a dominant strategy now of us. And so us is going to be the solution to the game. If we looked at this from a self and other perspective, without the summation, you can see that this Nash equilibrium here of a 6-6 is the same as a solution of other in our original payoff matrix. So here you can see how that humanism technique is going to solve the prisoner's dilemma of exchange by summing the payoffs up, because both are being redefined as human and both are being summed up in a cooperative game. So as to how this is going to be represented in the culture of a humanistic culture, is there will be lots of mergers and acquisitions, where now the solution here is both, me and you, self and other. Also, from a cultural perspective, a humanistic culture is going to define themselves not as a collective or non-individual, nor are they going to, because we are defining ourselves as us. The question here is, how do we define us? And we can define ourselves or find our identity in those groups. So groups, social groups, political groups, activist groups, religious groups, any kind of group we can find our identity in this humanistic culture. Okay, so let's take a look at how humanism can fall down into self-destruction and hatred. And so here, for humanism, the solution is a solution through a de-individualization. So in a humanistic culture, the individual is not that important because we're summing up individuals into groups and looking at the collective payoff of the group. Individual payoffs may be pushed beneath the rug. Individuals themselves may be ignored and may be run over or left out. And let's expand this a little bit. Down here on the bottom right, you have another choice. And here you have a choice of going up or going down. And now you have three individuals, person A, person B, and person C. If you choose up, person A gets 50, a reward, or 50 payoff, or 50 quality of life. Person B gets a 20 quality of life, and person C gets harmed by a pretty significant amount. If you choose down, each individual gets paid 10, person A, person B, and person C. And so the question here is, which path are we going to take? And this gets us back into ethics a little bit, in terms of what is the most ethical choice to make. But in a humanistic framework, we're going to, again, sum up all players into a group and look at the overall payoff of the group. And so here you can see the payoff of going up is greater than the payoff of going down from a group perspective. So from a humanistic culture, what we will see and what we've already seen, if you pay attention to the news and the rhetoric that's being pushed around, is that we have a return of a utilitarian ethics, which again is just going to be what is the greatest good for the greatest number of people. And so individuals in a utilitarian framework and in a humanistic framework have no real inherent value. They can be ignored, and therefore this can lead us to self-destruction and hatred. Let's take a look at self-destruction. If I am only seen as what I can contribute to the whole, and let's say I'm person C over here, I don't have a very high intellect, I am not very attractive, I don't have a lot of worth in this humanistic culture. I could see myself as not having much to contribute, suffer from a deep sense of worthlessness because I don't have an inherent worth given to me by God. But yet I still have a self that's supposed to contribute, so I can't lose self like I might do in an Eastern religion. And so what happens here is I can suffer from a deep sense of worthlessness. And that's in the passive state. That active state, again, that sense of worthlessness can move into action, which could be death by suicide. There could be self-destructive behavior that may not lead fully unto death, but there could be self-denial, self-hatred, self-loathing, because self is not something that has much worth, because self here is unable to contribute very much to the species as a whole. And that's from an individualistic perspective in terms of self-destruction. Now this can be turned external as well. So here, when we turn it external, remember here we can define what we mean by humanity. Nietzsche allowed us to say, let's revisit what it means to be human. Let's revisit what it means to be good or evil or selfish. Let's revisit these, but through a redefinition of humanity itself. The same can be done with transhumanism. Let's overcome the human. So what happens here is that we can define what value is. We can define what it means to be human. And if somebody doesn't meet our criteria of what it means to be a good human, we can deny that person value. We can look down upon that person as somebody who is less than us, less than self, less than human, because they are not meeting our criteria for what we think a human is or should be. So again, maybe perhaps the poor, the disabled, the unintelligent, the people who don't have a lot to contribute, we can look down upon, falling into apathy of the other. We could also have an active form of this, which is going to be all of these dystopian horrors that we can read about. Because we can define what humanity is, we can also define what humanity is not. And those who do not meet our criteria can be annihilated, can be destroyed. We can cause massive amounts of genocide because they do not meet what we say is the best human, or what we say is defined as human. So let's take a look at some examples. Perhaps in the environment and the environmentalists, they may see themselves as that which is truly human, and the other humans who are imposing high costs on the environment perhaps don't have the right to live. Perhaps they should be annihilated. The same could be said of the elderly. The elderly don't have worth of contributing to the species anymore. And so therefore, maybe we could go ahead and annihilate the elderly because they have no worth. Into genetically modifying the human, those humans which are not genetically modified may be of a lower class, may be wiped out. And again, because the human has no inherent worth, only what it can contribute to the whole, a lot of these dystopian horrors are possible in this new humanity. But again, with all of these religions, they all can suffer from self-destruction and hatred. So in the next video, we'll go ahead and summarize our discussion of religion and take a look to see if different religions, when interacting with each other, can still solve that prisoner's dilemma of exchange, and how we can move forward to see if we can coexist and actually increase our overall quality of life because of all of these different approaches to overcoming selfishness and evil.